And good evening. Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show we have a talk about a Linux project. Generally, it's a Linux distribution, but it could be centered around a desktop environment or application. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. So how is everybody today?
Great.
Good.
Excellent.
Doing good?
Doing well, thank you.
How are you, Nate?
Great. I'm excited. Things are going in the right direction. I think I shared with you earlier something I've been doing to organize my information technology nonsense. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So on the docket for today, we're gonna talk about Solus Linux, our distro exploration of the week. Then we're gonna check the menu to see what's next for our distro cocktail. We got a news flight, a community free pour. We'll do our last call, but first, I'd like to highlight what somebody has been doing in Linux this last week. So Steve, you were having some fun here. I wasn't sure what exactly you wanted to share of it, but I'm sure we're all worried.
Well, possibly, maybe, sometimes very soon this week. Don't know. We might be coming out with another distribution. I wonder what it could be.
Not supposed to guess, Rick.
I think we are about there. There's no official, but stay tuned this week, and we shall see.
All right, so some big Linux news on the horizon for a beloved project,
All
you
right,
could
I don't
say.
want off mic shit again.
All right, yeah. Looks good. Looks good. And if anybody else had anything else that they wanted to share? Thomas, you said you had something?
Yeah. So anybody who has played Skyrim on Linux knows that Skyrim itself works, but getting mods working outside of that built-in mod manager is a pain. I have gotten Skyrim mods working on Linux, and it's actually relatively easy if you know what you're doing. I've gotten it working to the point where I was able to install mods that remove the built-in 60 FPS frame limiter and have gotten FPS up to 144
Ooh.
and a little higher sometimes. I've been able to get basically any sort of mod that I would want to make things look better, at least, working. And the only issue I'm having is a little bit of over sharpening in shadows and some artifacting around water, but nothing that makes it unplayable. So I might write up how to do that in the future, because it's not terribly hard. It's just the fact that you have to do some things that you didn't know you could do.
Well, that's excellent. So I don't know. All right, I don't know anything about Skyrim. So is that a pretty popular game right now? Is it?
Skyrim is a 10-year-old game from Bethesda.
Oh, okay.
It used to be a really popular game. When it came out, it was one of the biggest AAA games out there for a couple of years. And there's still a very big community around it just because of how easy it is to mod it.
Yeah, I didn't play it until probably 3 years ago, and it's still very vibrant. There's a lot of people playing that game still.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's an open world fantasy game, if that puts it. Open world RPG.
Yeah, it's a really fun. It's kind of like not like World of Warcraft, but it kind of has like you're building a character, you're developing skills, finding loot, all that sort of stuff in an open. It's actually much more open world than I would say something like World of Warcraft, but it's very immersive, and you kind of get sucked in, and you add some mods on, and then all of a sudden, you can change things up, and yeah, it's a great game. It really is. So it's an achievement,
and it's not hard to run either. Like, I can run it with a pretty rock steady 60 FPS on a quad core with a 1050 Ti and only 8 gigs of RAM. It's not hard to run, and that's at max settings too. So if you have nothing else to do with your life, Definitely give Skyrim a go. And I say nothing else to do with your life because it will suck you in. There's a lot to do.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad to know that a 10-year-old game finally has mod support in Linux. So yay for Linux.
Wow, well, put it that way.
Well, I mean,
Ouch.
better late than never. Better late
Yeah.
than never. So
Okay.
I
at least,
think the
at least
mods
it's
were
there.
working earlier. It's just I discovered that you can finally do this.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So after 10 years, Thomas finally understands.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. So we have, I see that we have Joe Linux. You're new to the saloon. I hope you brought your favorite stool and a beverage of your choice. So welcome. Yeah, is there anything else that anybody wants to share? Anything else? It's
Just
right.
anything, any sort of computer related or technology related, things that you've done in your house, networks, gadgets,
Distros.
anything.
Installing a lot of distros.
Yeah.
Installing a lot of
The other
distros,
thing I've
yeah.
been doing recently is trying to get Pipewire, Jack, and Super Collider to work.
And how's
Oh,
it going?
okay.
I don't know. I'd like to. I'd like to get a session with someone who actually knows the ins and outs of Jack and Pipewire and all this stuff to help me figure out what's going wrong.
Well, if Scrapjaw joins us, yeah, he's our resident musician and he does a lot with Jack and audio processing and stuff like that. So he tends to jump on towards the end of the stream. So we'll see if he joins today.
Does Pipewire have any influence on Bluetooth at all, or not?
It can.
does.
There's an
Don't
audio
know.
audio component, yeah, certainly.
I don't use Bluetooth things in general. I don't like the latency.
Understandable.
Or the reliability. Yeah.
I've been very reliably using Bluetooth headphones every show, so if that means anything, I will say the quality is better on Pipewire. I switched one of my machines over to Pipewire because it was having trouble under Pulse Audio. Could have been something else. Nonetheless, it was the impetus to try Pipewire, but I do notice it is lower latency and it seems to maintain quality better. Also, like if you get to the edge of the Bluetooth range,
Reliability.
yeah, it picks it up better coming back.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I want to sort out Bluetooth connection. I'm sick of trying to click about 100 times trying to get my thing connected. It's driving me nuts right now.
Well,
Maybe
what
I'll-
you're trying to use that's Bluetooth? Your
This,
headphones? Okay.
yeah, they were working. They stopped connecting automatically when I upgraded to Pop OS 2110 is the latest one, yeah. And they stopped automatically connecting, but now I've just done my ISO for Arch and I'm on that. It's doing the same thing. So it's not the distro itself that's doing it or the base. It's got to be something else.
Sounds like a hardware problem.
So I do have a suggestion for you. If you have the Pulse Audio Volume Control, if you go into configuration and check where your USB devices, or I'm sorry, your Bluetooth devices, check the codec. There's multiple codecs, and some of those will cause my Bluetooth device to have an aneurysm, and so play around with that. That's what I would do.
All right. I'll do that later, not now.
Yeah, right.
My normal solution for all that is disconnect, reconnect, disconnect, reconnect, disconnect, reconnect. And then it usually works eventually.
Well, and Leo, if it doesn't do it, then try removing it, adding it, removing it, adding it, removing it, adding it, just in case. Yeah, I've had terrible luck with Bluetooth audio, and that's not just with Linux distribution. That's just in general. I don't have very good luck with it. The newer protocols, I've noticed that the newer devices are much better at being able to reconnect and multiple connections, that sort of thing. So it seems like it's gotten much better, which is a sign. But yeah, any of the older stuff I have is just it's almost not worth using because of the frustration that comes along with it. And that's not, and again, that's not just Linux. That's just, using my phone, using some devices are just not very good.
Yeah, I've got a Windows box and an Xbox controller that, they're supposed to be amazing. and they're never supposed to have any kind of issues. But in the middle of playing something like Forza, my controller will just disconnect.
Oh,
And then maybe like 4 seconds later, it'll pop back on and be like, "Hey,
And you're dead.
how's it
and that's
going?"
after,
Yeah, and you're dead.
I'm in the
that's after you fit the
weeds.
wall. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So I, not to derail it further, but my favorite controller for everything now is the Wii U Pro controller, the Bluetooth controller for all my retro games or even modern games that you require such controllers. And it never has disconnect issues. The only problem I have is it sometimes falls asleep, and then the game doesn't want to look at it again, or it changes the order of the controllers. So, but outside of that, the falling asleep thing, if I could keep it awake, it would be just the absolute best. But like, I don't play very long, so it's not a big deal. So, but yeah, I think that's my favorite controller to use right now. And as far as latency goes, it's good enough where I don't notice it in the athletic style games from the 8-bit era.
Yeah.
So we're ready to move on. Let's talk about our
Absolutely.
distro exploration, which is Solus Linux today. We'll talk about some rules first. The attempt is to talk about different aspects of the OS and discuss the experience after using it. This is a discussion by which only objective and constructive will be its product. Non-objective opinions like "this is garbage" is not helpful. Rather, if you say, "I wish I had this feature," or "I really need features that allow me to," you are benefiting the conversation. The point is highlight the positives, but not ignore the lowlights of the project as well. Remember, this is a labor of love for some. Let's not poo-poo it.
We had a poll on Telegram about how our Solus exploration was going. 5% voted Solus is amazing, make all sale. 17% is voted Solus is okay. 22% voted I am not having a good time with Solus. 34% voted I am not interested in trying Solus. 5% said I don't have time for this exploration. 17% said I'm not interested in doing the explorations. And the only reply to the poll was installed NVIDIA beta driver and broke LightDM. I'll retry with a non-beta driver.
I just suspect it's the same 17% that say I'm not interested in doing any distro explorations. They're very dedicated on ensuring they say we're not interested in doing them. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, you put the option there.
I know.
Someone's gonna click it.
Well, I was surprised that the largest percentage did go to "I'm not interested in trying Solus," and I think that's kind of a shame. How could you not even want to give it a chance? I mean, it's and certainly this Solus has a lot of polish behind it. I mean, it's been around for many years. It's a really great distribution. So to just dismiss it offhand, I mean, either they've had a experience in the past and they don't want to revisit it, or I guess they just don't want to try new things.
That's a really good thought. I was kind of wondering if maybe because it's only desktop focused, and maybe a lot of Linux users also have a lot of server based things as well.
Could
so
be.
maybe it's if they want more of a homogeneous Linux setup, it maybe not fit into their scheme, which is actually my case. But I still think I think it's pretty great. So
Well, speaking as someone that does do that, I don't mind. It doesn't matter to me. I think when I SSH into my servers and do tinkery things, I'm in the mindset of, well, these are the commands I need to use to get this job done. And when I'm on the desktop, it can be totally different. And a lot of times it's a GUI for whatever it is I'm trying to get done anyway. So that doesn't really factor in for me.
Gotcha.
I think to be honest, if to give my opinion on that, because I used to run Solus quite a fair bit a few years ago, but nothing really has changed in the desktop itself. So there's nothing that really is groundbreaking and exciting to look at. Solus is a desktop, it's simple and it works. And I think that's probably why people really don't want to go back, because there's not much of a change happening there. There was some mentions of changes happening, and I think we'll probably get to that. And that was many years ago as well. But I think once our conversation goes a bit further, there might be something we mentioned that could change that.
Well, and that's a good point, and it does lead me to I'm going to give a couple minutes here to go back and sort of cover the history of Solus, and then we'll pick back up with, and maybe through this we'll sort of flush some of that out. So Solus Linux, previously known as Evolve OS, is an independently developed operating system for the x86-64 architecture based on the Linux kernel. And they have 4 choices of desktop. They develop Budgie, so they're the original developers of the Budgie desktop. They also offer GNOME, Mate, and KDE Plasma, which they only used to offer, I think, Budgie, and I think maybe one other desktop. So they've expanded and included other desktops, which so I think that's sort of opened up their base a little bit as well. Maybe someone in the group remembers that, but
Mate, I think Mate was the second one they offered, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Mate.
Yeah, I know for a while, if you know, it's pretty polarizing. Either you want to use Budgie or you don't. And so that was sort of like a yes or no right away, and that cut a lot of people out.
Actually, no, it might have been Gnome. I think it was Gnome was their second offering. Mate was after that, I think.
Well, it makes sense because Budgie is based off of GNOME. So, okay, it has a package manager EO package. It's based on the PySci package management system from Partis Linux. And it has a semi-rolling release model with a new package updates landing in the stable repository every Friday. The developers of Solus have stated that Solus is intended exclusively for use on personal computers and will not include software that is only useful in enterprise or server environments. So that's something that Nate touched on a little bit earlier. So on September 20th, 2015, Ike Doherty announced that Solus 1.0 will be codenamed Shannon after the River Shannon in Ireland, indicating that code names for releases will continue this theme using Irish rivers. In July 2016, Solus announced the intention to discard the concept of fixed point releases and to embrace a rolling release model. And as an independent distribution, having a rolling release model is a pretty impressive thing. It's a lot of work, you know, to be keeping up to date with all those packages. And so actually, I've always been impressed by the fact that Solus is a rolling release, independent rolling release. In January 2017, Doherty announced that Solus will adopt Flatpak to reassemble third-party applications. I'm guessing to reassemble meaning to be able to offer more third-party applications. Prior to this, you would have to request that a package be included in the repository if it wasn't already there. And depending on the popularity, sometimes it would be and sometimes it wouldn't be. But I know in the past, that was a problem where people would not be able to get access to the software that they needed to because it just wasn't available in, and I'm sure you could still go and, you know, compile from source and all that, but that's not really convenient for a lot of people to do that. So by using Flatpaks, that really opens up, you know, to a lot of software that they themselves don't then have to maintain, which makes a lot of sense. In August, they already announced that Solus also would adopt snaps in addition to Flatpaks. So now you've got Flatpaks and snaps, tons of software in addition to their own repository. On June 13th of the same year, so 2017, it was announced that the developer team had been expanded with Stefan Rick and Ike Doherty, previously working for Intel on Clear Linux OS, started working full-time on Solus. On November 2nd, 2018, technology website Phronix published an open letter from original founder Ike Doherty confirming that he was stepping back from the project, assigning any and all intellectual naming and branding rights related to the ownership of Solus to the development team with immediate and permanent effect, acknowledging them as the official owners and leadership of the project. And then the last item I have is very relevant and recent. On January 1st, 2022, experienced lead Josh Strobel announced that his resignation from Solus after 6 years of involvement with the project. So I mentioned the desktops, and that's just to finish this out, the ISO offerings are 4 separate ISOs, Budgie, GNOME, Mate, and Plasma. So there you go.
They've had quite a storied past, you could say. I know that was quite a controversy when Mr. Doherty left the project, kind of put it in a lurch for a while. But I think that the project as a whole really it recovered and kind of just steamed on through quite nicely, I think.
think the project did. I wonder if that small percentage of people that just decided that they didn't want to try Solus for the sake of it being Solus brought a lot of that in, brought a lot of that baggage in, and that's what convinced them not to try at all. The whole Ike leaving and then Josh leaving here recently.
I remember right before Ike left that there were talks of changing Budgie to a Qt-based desktop environment, but now it's going to be what, Enlightenment-based or something like that, or is that what it's called?
Tools.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
EFL.
EFL. There we go.
EFL, yeah.
I actually think Josh leaving's exciting news, actually, because he may have time just to work on that desktop and put functionality and maybe some apps or whatever within the desktop that they've been probably wanting for so long. So I think it's probably a good thing. I just hope it doesn't have a negative impact on the budget, the Solus team itself. That's all.
We talked about the ISO options. Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, I guess I clipped out there a little bit. All right, so the installation process. When I installed it, it was very, very easy to install, and it was incredibly quick. Eric, did you have a similar experience when installing it?
I'll be honest and tell you that I actually did not get a chance to try it this week. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah.
I should have asked.
How
Yes.
could you?
In the past, though, I have never had any issues with their installer. I actually like their installer. The one thing I think that you could say might be a challenge is if you're trying to dual boot, because they take the position that they are going to be the only operating system on the disk. Unless this has changed, someone stop me if it's different.
No, it still shows up as pretty much one option. You do have an option to do, I guess, your own partitions in that, so you can probably go from there. But it's pretty much erased full disk.
There was something with the EFI boot, though, if I'm remembering correctly. There was something that was like, yeah. And anyway, I found it difficult in the past to dual boot Solus with something else.
If I remember correctly, people have said that they put an EFI partition for every single distro so that
Yes.
they don't share it, but Solus will always grab one. Like it will grab another one or something.
In the past, I remember exactly what it was now. They weren't using Grub. They were expecting you that if you had multiple distros installed, that you would be switching between them in your BIOS boot menu, which is pretty inconvenient, honestly, because and honestly, I want to say that Pop OS was very similar to this.
Yeah, it kind of screws the blind community over because we don't really have access to the BIOS because there's no talking BIOS at that point. So if it screws up your boot menu, yeah, that's why I did it in a VM.
Gotcha. Well, hey, that makes sense. Yeah. That's what it is. They just don't use Grub, I don't believe, or at least they won't do what is it, the OS prober or whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think Pop OS is as aggressive as Solus, because if you've got a separate EFI partition, Pop OS is fine. I'm not sure about Solus. I'm pretty sure I've dual booted that before, but it would have been a long time ago, forgotten. But normally the separate EFI partitions are the best way to go anyway.
They use system deboot. I think that's what Dolphin is saying in the chat.
Mm-hmm. And it's UEFI boot only, so no legacy.
Yeah, it wouldn't even work on the laptop bare metal because I turned UEFI off in college and never turned it back on.
There you go. Solus and Windows, apparently. So beyond that, Nate, I think that was the biggest challenge I've ever faced in the past with the installer. Everything else was pretty straightforward. Do they offer anything like ButterFS or ZFS or anything like that? Is it?
They offer
LVM, I think, and then
LVM.
As an option in the installer, I didn't see anything, just an option for LVM.
I don't remember seeing any file system options, honestly.
Yeah,
they offered that. They offered the LVM, and they offered for the install to be encrypted. full disk encryption. I think those were the two.
Yeah, that was
settings.
also, yep.
Okay. So then you don't have an option to do something like Butterfest, or because I'm starting to notice that more and more. I'm starting to look for it because I'm wanting to use those options.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'm paying attention to now. So
Yeah, I wonder if it's in where you create your own partitions. I didn't explore that, so
By default, it uses ext4, then has a swap partition.
right.
Yeah.
So pretty standard fare.
So I installed on mine export ext4 partition. I didn't do it, just did it. Put on automatic, that's what I put on there.
Yeah. Did you guys notice a way to do updates from the installer?
Yeah.
There's a way to do updates to the
Updates?
installer.
I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
because I found that I had to update after I reboot, but since this is rolling, it should just install the freshest packages on the system anyway.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's ever done
Snapshot.
that. You always
Yeah,
have
and
to
I can
update
tell you, it
afterwards.
didn't do it. I was installing it today, and Colin had the issue, and
I did.
Rick had the issue, where all of a sudden it stopped, at a certain point. Through the GUI, it was stopping. It had 358,
Yeah,
Something like that.
Like that.
380
and it
my
stopped
package.
for me at like 124. I think Rick, you said 126.
Yeah, something
So
like that.
I
did
went
it
in and I
several
did
times.
the EOPK up,
Yeah.
and there it stopped into the terminal at 80, and then I got this error. Couldn't
Probably
find any big issue. I know this happened in looking in their forum. This has happened a few years ago, where all of a sudden no one can get an update in that, and then the next day it fixed. So we might find if we go in tomorrow, we probably can update. But yeah, there were like 358 updates to go on this ISO.
I had to run it like 7 times in order to get it through the downloads.
Yeah, I suppose if that happened during install, if it was trying to grab updates during install, it may have just not installed.
Yeah, right.
Installed at that point. So yeah, I'm glad it didn't.
Don't use an installer with the errors. They don't even have an installer as far as I know.
I noticed that there's dependency updates before the main updates. So I tried going around the system and trying to do at least one of those dependencies on its own, and it looked like it was going to go through, but it didn't. So I think I didn't check to see how old their ISOs are. They must be a little bit old, are they? The ISOs?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I didn't check.
I want to say back in November is when the last one they put out, but I'm not sure about that. But I think it's back in November.
But that's the first time I've really experienced any real issues with upgrading in Solus anyway. But I have to say the desktop still looks pretty good and very polished. Even more polished than it did, the last time I tried it. So it's looking good.
To answer that question about when the ISOs were published, it looks like Solus 4.3, Budgie, No Mate, and Plasma were all published on July 11th, 2021.
July.
Yeah, that's fairly old for a rolling.
Yeah.
For a rolling ISO.
I didn't even check that.
What does GNOME boxes use as default? Does it use
KVM.
master boot record, or does it use the UEFI? Because I use that, and so it does it automatically for you?
I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah, as long as you have the module already in there, like the package that contains EFI and legacy boot, it just takes care of it automatically. But it defaults to legacy. If it doesn't do legacy, it will go to EFI. That's my understanding.
Because I installed it, and I think it put up a grub screen when I restarted. So it must have used master boot record, I'm guessing.
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't recall. I don't know. I didn't pay attention to that.
One of the default applications I saw that I haven't seen in other default installs is the KDE Connect. That was in. I noticed that was in there.
Which desktop were you running?
So I installed the Plasma, but then added the Budgie desktop later.
Right.
I started with Plasma because I hadn't tried Plasma. I wanted to give something else a try. And then, but then, I found that yeah, Budgie was the default desktop, and I added it after. And I can't change the background. So I think there's a little issue there, but
Pretty sure KDE Connect is part of Plasma and would go on the Plasma.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Right.
came in with Plasma, definitely.
that came in with Plasma. Okay.
Yeah.
But the GNOME and well, you've got GTK and Qt. They're probably the worst two desktop environments to mix together, to be honest.
And I found upon installing the system, first thing I looked was what packaging system it had, and the EOL the EL whatever it is, EO package. Yeah, I had to learn about that. So again, this is a good learning experience. Definitely.
I believe that that packaging system is originally from Partis Linux, and they adopted that as their packaging system.
Do you know why they replaced their previous packaging system?
I don't know if they ever had a different one. I'm not sure about that.
Well,
I thought it was part of. I thought it was part of something that Ike was running way before Solus, or he got it from the Partis. Is that where he got it from, Partis itself?
Yeah, I believe they got it from Partis. It's a Turkish Linux distro.
Yeah, I thought there was another packaging system they once had, but I'm probably dead wrong. So dead wrong.
I noticed that their software center didn't have a lot of icons and such for the packages. So certain things that we expect, we're looking for certain icons, and that wasn't happening here.
Okay.
Such as like GIMP, I'm always going to install GIMP. I'm installing a couple other things, and it just shows the package icon with a zipper on it. Just square box with a zipper.
Well, we can segue into the default application selection.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. So let's segue into the default application selection. Solus was always known in the beginning, because they were curating a lot of their packages and not having a lot. It looked great. The Budgie desktop looked great to be in, but a lot of people didn't seem to like, or the comments that I remember reading back then were that it wasn't, they didn't have a lot of packages because they were taking time to curating. But the emphasis then on putting in snaps and flat packs changed all that. I know it changed my mind the last time I looked at it, because I was having difficulties with some of the things like OBS and that installed on it. Did anybody else run into issues, or what their comment is on their store?
Well, I'll say that the base application list is, I think it's for like basic Office, home office, whatever. Pretty much everything you need is there. There wasn't like GIMP wasn't installed, but I think that's not everybody needs GIMP. But like everything else, you had your PDF reader, I believe, and then you had LibreOffice, your web browser and such. So, as far as the base goes, I thought it was a reasonable base to have, out of the gate.
And then the flat pack selection makes it, even greater. And
Right.
I think one of the things that I do like is they give you an option for maybe a little more proprietary software to be installed with,
The third party.
Third-party applications. Just a one-touch click, and you can get Chrome or Teams, couple others that you normally won't be able to get in a regular package manager.
For the command line guys, Vim was missing from the default install. I had to install it. Again, I started with the Plasma. I don't think that's got anything to do with it, but Vim was missing.
I
That's a
didn't
good
check to
thing.
see if Nano was there. Did it have Nano? What did it have?
Honestly, I didn't see Vim, and went to install it. Nano is on there by default. Seems.
Okay, so Leo's happy.
I've
That's
noticed
good.
that for in other distros too. It's kind of hit or miss for Vim to be installed. A lot of times it will be, but it has surprised me in other instances where it's not. So
Nano's been my go-to, but I'm starting to fall in love with Micro because it actually has if
Mm.
you're using a graphical terminal, you can mouse in it. So if when you have those moments where you think you're using a GUI, it doesn't totally rip you out of your presence of mind.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
yeah, Micro's pretty good.
I've never used that one. It's just Micro, just called Micro.
Yeah, it behaves very much like Nano, but you have additional support for input devices and things.
So I would be interested in a text editor that had like more contemporary shortcuts. So like Control C for copy and stuff like that. I'm sure that's probably not.
Yeah,
I can't do it for
Micro's
some
like
reason.
that.
You're
Micro?
describing Micro.
Okay. So Micro is what I need to try.
Yeah, you can set up Nano to do that, but it's not natural for most people to go in and change
Okay.
your key binding and stuff like that on there.
Nano has started to support Control S for save, and then
Oh yeah, I've used that frequently.
I don't remember if Control Q quits. I know Control X does.
Control X, yeah.
Yeah.
You can probably set the key binding to do that, but I don't know.
One thing I found was the installing packages from the EO package command line. It says, "Do you want to continue?" And it's yes or no, and they want you to spell it out. I didn't
Yeah.
try it. But I'm
That's-
not
I
really used to just
I
a
seen that
wire
when I
in.
was doing the update, and I just hit Y, and it continued on.
I was starting to think that was a security thing to make sure that you decided you wanted to really do this, but then we watched Linus Tech Tips write out a whole entire paragraph in Bork's system.
So,
Welcome.
any other comments on the applications?
Going to say
yeah,
Micro is awesome because Sublime Text is awesome and it's a clone of Sublime Text, but in the terminal, so therefore awesome.
What is Micro?
Yeah, Micro.
Okay, you're pretty quiet, just so you know.
So, well, you're welcome for bringing it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Micro. It's pretty awesome. It's basically having the functionality of a lot of Sublime, not everything of Sublime, but a lot of Sublime, but in a terminal where that's the only environment that Sublime doesn't work in, or that's the only argument anybody's ever given me that's like valid in, for my opinion, to not use Sublime, because Sublime is the best. Not biased or anything, but the option of Micro being in the terminal is really cool.
I had no idea. I wrote that down for my follow-up notes. So it's something I'll be playing with this week. So thank you, everybody.
All right, pop quiz on next Saturday.
What's quiz over?
Can you
Over
find
Micro.
Zoom in there? No.
Nate's gonna do a whole 30-minute segment on how good Micro is.
All right, I'll prepare something special just for you,
No
Leo.
pressure though.
Well, we want to try and maintain some people watching the stream, so we don't want everyone to watch their grass grow or something like that. So, as far as applications that you added, was there anything that people needed to add to have a more complete experience in Solus?
Well, I usually use a email client. There was
Yeah.
one in there.
Thunderbird was in there, I thought, at least in the
Leaf-
Budgie version.
Mate didn't have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
I only
interesting.
you only had two out on the internet thing: Firefox and HexChat.
Interesting.
Came with
Wonder-
Thunderbird in the Plasma edition also.
Okay.
So, but that's not either here or there. It's easier. I like to install whatever I want. So,
I want I like Solus, and I think that the reason why Solus has become a reasonably usable option is like what people were saying earlier about the Flatpak and Snap support. Prior to those, I couldn't use Solus. There were so many applications I just didn't have access to.
Yeah.
But now, especially with Flatpaks and app images automatically, because they just work wherever.
Right.
Having access to the universal formats made Solus a usable distribution for me.
We had a conversation with Josh after our episode of Linux User Space on Solus, and that was pretty much the plan, to just drop the third-party tab in their software center thing, and then just go 100% in Snap and Flatpaks, and it seems to have paid off. I think.
I mean, I think so. I think the fact that you have Flatpak support just right there, for me, basically it eliminates that. Do you have enough applications for, for your distro? Now, did you notice any theme integration issues or with Flatpaks? I didn't install any Flatpaks. There was a few. I installed some applications that I wanted, but I didn't install any Flatpak. It seemed.
Snap's integration and Solus that's Snap's fault, really. But Flatpak integrations are decent.
Does Solus have its own theme, or is it just using the default themes for the DEs?
Last
Budgie,
I
they have their
checked,
own
it was
theme.
Arc Dark, but I don't know if they.
Yeah, so it's just one of the major, like a normal. Okay, I didn't think. I was trying to remember, but I know they don't tend to customize the desktop quite too much. They just sort of give a hint of customization.
Yeah, Budgie is that real black. I mean, I forget what they call it.
Nice.
Raven.
The other
Nice.
Is it Raven?
nice. It is. It's a gorgeous. I mean, it's just wow. It looks so nice.
So is Mate.
Yeah, it's simple, but it just to me it just works. The interface just works really well.
Looks
It
nice.
It feels modern. It's snappy. It's dark. It doesn't bother my eyes, and to me that's pretty huge.
Yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of people, I know myself included, Ubuntu Budgie does a lot of customization for their Budgie desktop. They've got a Plank launcher and the bars at the top, and they've got a conky desktop clock, and like they've got all kind of stuff. And if you look at the Solus version of Budgie, which they're the ones that develop it, so technically like the default look and feel of Budgie, it's very much like Cinnamon, and for me. So it's interesting that, I think a lot of people experience Budgie by way of Ubuntu Budgie, and that's so radically different that the last time I tried Solus and used Budgie, I was like, oh wow, that's right. Like they have a completely different default, and some of these things make a lot more sense, laid out like this. I remember one of the things that they had that kind of bums me out now is Raven used to have a lot more stuff in there, if I'm not mistaken, and it seems like they don't utilize that as much as I thought. That was a pretty cool design idea to have that pop out shelf, do different things with it, and it seems like they haven't really done as much with it. I mean, I could be misremembering this, but I thought for a while it seemed like they had a lot of stuff in there, a lot of functionality, and then it seems like they sort of pulled back, and it's just notifications. And it's still nice to be able to get to the media that's playing, and it has some utility more than just like the system tray or something like that. It's more of a landing place where you can put rich controls and notifications and things like that. So I think it's still useful and helpful. I don't know. I felt like for a while there they were doing more with it, or were going to do more with it. But
it's dynamic, is it not? I think like when you're playing audio, that little audio thing will grow to a larger size so you can see what's going on. And if I'm not mistaken, you can add stuff to it too. So that might be part of it.
I did try right clicking on it to see if I could put things on there, like if there's any to add stuff. That wasn't an option. But I do want to say I did get a little bit tripped up by Raven, because I thought that the little icon they use for the pop out is what some desktop environments use for like the leave. And so when I went to reboot it, I clicked on that first.
Gotcha.
Here's all the info.
And I should also say, for people who don't know, Raven is a panel on the right hand side, almost like I'm going to say, and this is probably wrong, but like Windows, Mac OS has a pane or a panel on the right that sort of does.
Windows 10 has that too. Yeah.
Does it? Doesn't?
Uh,
Okay.
Message Center or whatever they call it.
Gotcha. So it's been, so the one in Budgie's been around for quite a while. So I think it predates all of the other uses of it. But anyway, it's just a little panel that pops out of the right-hand side and has, like we're saying, different controls in it and things like that. So
I think you are right. I think it is like like more condensed than what it used to be. It feels like it does a lot less than it was, because it was doing all sorts of different settings inside of the Raven panel.
yeah.
And it does seem a little bit different than the last time I tried it.
Yeah, they stripped all that stuff out.
Okay.
When I,
I'm not misremembering then.
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, they had a lot of stuff in there.
Okay.
I cannot remember what it was now, but when I first started using Solus, they had so much stuff in there, and they stripped it out to calendar and player, I think.
Okay.
And they're just so you know, the widget that they're using for the theme is Plata Noir. Yeah. So that's
Okay.
what they.
Gotcha.
So speaking of that theme, HHNLD brought it up again in chat, but Flatpaks in general. Oh, I think, well, a lot of the GNOME applications, GTK4 based applications, you're going to start noticing a lot more theme inconsistencies coming up in the next few months. I've already started noticing one. I think it was like this for a long time though. Apostrophe, which is a markdown text editor, but it's got a lot of specific features toward just writing long form stuff. So it's really good for just that. But it's already on the GTK4 only and Edwata only train. And I imagine there's going to be a lot more of those applications that are don't theme my app, that group are going to be very Edwata. They're going to be very
Guarded.
Edwata. Yeah.
They're going to be Edwata. Yeah.
So no matter what theme you're using, it's Edwata.
Exactly. You GTK4, then you enjoy GTK4.
Well, think about mobile operating systems, because they sort of already do that, right? Like all of the system settings and many applications will share sort of the same control set, but then other applications will follow maybe a lighter dark themes. Just the idea that not everything is 100% homogeneous across the board. Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence, because in one way I do kind of understand what the app developers are saying, that they intend it to be used a certain way, and then they then have to deal with users reporting issues that are not related to something, it's related to theming or some other problem that has nothing to do with their core development effort. And so I kind of get that, but at the same time, I think we all are so used to having that sort of consistency across the desktop, especially if from a GTK perspective, at least from my perspective on that. So if I'm using, GNOME or Cinnamon or, Budgie for that matter, like if I set the theme, it's pretty much respected across the board.
I feel like it's kind of where this is when people argue about like they don't like that they can't use the different like the themes and it's all mixed and mashed. I think that's kind of normal these days, especially with like Windows users where nothing is coherent and everything looks completely different. And I think that is something that people are not really expecting anymore, to have a full thing. But the argument that one of the developers of the apps had a problem with was to me felt so ridiculous when they were mad that people wanted a dark mode because they didn't like dark mode. I'm like,
yeah, that's right. And that's someone like you, as a developer, you have to, of course you have your vision of something, especially from a UI perspective. But they also have to understand that certain people are using dark mode, not just because they think it's cool or they like it, but because for a lot of people having that contrast makes text readable, and on a white background, it's not. And a lot of places are terrible. A lot of websites and a lot of software is terrible with using low contrast fonts that make it very difficult for people with even moderate sight issues to read. So for someone to want to use a dark reader mode, it's not necessarily because, oh, dark mode, all the things. It's, I know myself personally, like I have a really hard time with a blasting white screen with low contrast fonts. I can't really read that very long because it just fatigues my eyes so quickly.
Yeah, it's almost an accessibility thing, really. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people get migraines from the light desktop, so it's not just vanity. There's an actual reason why people need dark themes.
For me, it's
I will
vanity,
give
but also
Solus
that stuff you
credit.
were saying.
Right.
They did have the screen reader available, so I'll give them credit for that. I wasn't expecting that to be.
Okay.
They have a Orca, don't they?
Yes. Well, at least Budgie did. I'm not sure about Plasma, or I imagine GNOME and Mate would, but I did a testing on Budgie.
To me, I think Orca is the main accessibility screen reader for all of Linux, no matter what the
It's actually kind of the only one, right? Well, the only GUI screen reader for now.
That makes sense.
But Nate, I installed, I did install some app images that I usually pick, like Krita and FreeCAD, and those worked without problem. No issues there.
That's
And
good.
then from their software center, I did install KeyPass XC, and that worked fine.
That's
I have to
that's
say-
an excellent. Yeah. Good. Sorry.
For the their software center, not the flashiest software center out there, but
It works.
it works. And I learned about some new applications that I had no idea about, and so I kind of took some notes, installed a few that I've never even heard of before, and I was actually interested in. I ended up installing OpenSUSE, but has anyone used Git Kraken for managing their Git repository stuff here?
Correct.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
Thomas has. Michael, did you say you did?
I have.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Okay, I just installed it today on OpenSUSE. I haven't played with it yet, but it looks
it's-
really cool as far as like maybe easier, because I have a hard time remembering like all the terminal commands for like when I want to push something up. Not that I do it all the time, but I can't remember. I have a hard time with Git, so I'm a little bit slow.
Git
Yeah.
Kraken.
Go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead.
Git Kraken. I have a very complicated relationship with it. It works great, especially for new people who are coming to Git.
Mhm.
But Git Kraken, it's coming at Git as a Git interface that also tries to be an IDE. And like it works, but it's not great. I used it for a long time, but I ended up deciding that for most basic use cases, like switching branches, pulling, pushing, that whole thing, just using Atom, which has built-in Git and GitHub support, for me at least, tends to work better. Another thing you might want to try out, though, if you want a dedicated Git client, would be, I think it's Git G. I have it installed. I just never use it because, yeah, Git G.
There's also one that has a fantastic name, Giddy Up.
I haven't heard of this one. I need to try it.
Awesome. I love the name, but it's also a pretty good Git Up.
For what it's worth, Nate, Git Kraken is probably the one of the more popular UIs, graphical Git management tools. So you're not going to be sort of off on the side. There's a lot of people who use it and a lot of people who really like it.
There's nothing wrong with it. I absolutely love the view it has of the tree and the branches and all that. Absolutely love it. That is very useful, actually. And just seeing where different branches are in relation to each other. But there are different tools for different people. It's a great entryway to get you started on Git interfaces like that.
I think if you were writing and committing a lot of changes, relying on a graphical tool becomes tedious. Like it's really cumbersome. But like Thomas, I think what he's getting at is if you are writing code and it's built into your IDE or code editor, that you could make commits. It's usually just way easier to do it in line with whatever you're doing, or even in a command prompts.
It is.
I would
and
agree.
You're not
one-
managing a lot of like the whole project. You might only be focused on one branch, whereas maybe you want to see all of the different branches and things like that. So
one of the big things that I didn't like about GitKraken was it doesn't have a built-in terminal. So I'd have to have a separate window open for that. Whereas Gini and Atom, you can both have a built-in terminal. I'm not sure if they've added that because I haven't used GitKraken in a while. But if you don't use a terminal often, which I know, Nate, that is not the case for you. I'm sure you use the terminal all the time.
I do. In fact, actually, the way I use Git is with Dolphin, and like the little I open up the terminal underneath, so I can do that because the Dolphin will actually show me the changes when they're committed and everything else. So that's why I like Dolphin, because actually there's a plugin for that. But
Yeah. It's a great entryway in GitKraken. It's not for everyone, but if you want to try out a decent Git interface, GitKraken's a good place to start, honestly. I don't hate it, it's just not for me.
Yeah, I'm more in line with how you feel about doing it in your text editor, because it's right there.
that's cool.
I was going to mention that I did, one of the ways that I do these installs is I'll install in DigitalOcean or Vultr and access it remote. So I was able to get XRDP working, and so I could have the full desktop environment. And what I did appreciate about their repository, they do have XRDP GNOME integration, Plasma integration, Budgie integration, Mate integration. So that helps configure it a lot easier. So I did get remote desktop work.
Nice. That's good to know.
yeah, that's an important thing that a lot of people need that we generally don't talk about, but it is something that's pretty common.
Yeah. And cutting, just drag and dropping files from Windows into your RDP, it just works. That's what makes it a little bit easier, a little bit less barrier to using a Linux desktop is to be able to do both of those things.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Okay. Were there any particular difficulties or areas of difficulty that people found? I mean, we talked about, maybe you had to install some software or something like that, but was there anything that you were trying to do that you just couldn't get done?
Yeah, I couldn't update it.
I tried updating today,
Oh.
and I can only get like 120 packages downloaded. It was stuck there. It needed like 360, I think.
Does anyone know what their mirror situation is? Do they have a lot of mirrors or?
I couldn't find an option to change mirrors.
Yeah, me neither.
Hmm.
Took me 7 times to get through the updates. I did update it, but it took 7 times to do it.
I had
Got
no
it.
problems. It was great.
Seven-
Update process was fast. I rebooted. It was tip top.
Never rebooted.
When did you
Died.
update, Nathan?
It was a couple days ago. I can't remember.
Oh,
I have
Maybe
the
that's the
same
difference.
experience as
Yeah,
Nathan,
today's
but I
only
did
have
it like
no
Saturday
problem.
last.
Well,
Or no,
Friday
Sunday.
is when they dump their updates. Like they push updates on Friday, so it could be that
something
Um,
happened.
maybe something happened with something. I'm sure they're working on it. Because people complain pretty quick. I mean, look at us.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it just
Our-
happened to fall on our show's date.
Our
Yeah.
complaints are scheduled, okay?
Yeah, it's true. Every Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern,
Never complained, but
7 Central.
I tried to see if there was any issues with them on the downloads and that and the updates. The only thing I can find in their forum was something that happened back in 2019. It sounded like the same issue, and it seems like it's a weekend issue maybe. And that at the time, I think Brent was making the comment, and he said that just wait till the next day and it'll probably be fixed, and maybe we'll go in tomorrow and upload and update and it'll be fine.
Sounds like they need some more mirrors.
Could be.
Sierra Smith.
So, Colin, I was going to say, you mentioned that you used Solus as your, I guess, your daily driver for quite a while, or at least for some period of time, and then you moved away from it. Do you remember what that was, and did this correct any of that, or?
No, well, it was the time when sort of Ike left, and I just distro hop pretty much. Back then I was just distro hopping, so I was on Solus for maybe 3-4 months.
Okay.
And then I moved. I was actually back in the days when you had what was that channel we had with Google? What was the one that they had? It was a bit like a messenger board type thing. What was that one? No, the other one.
Google Plus.
There was another one. I used to help Google Plus. Yeah, that's the one.
Google
Yeah.
Plus. Okay.
I used to help a lot of people running Solus back then. I was a real fanboy to start with Solus. I just couldn't get enough of it, and I was making videos and helping people out. But they promised that it's going to go this way, it's going to go that way, and we're going to do this and that, and a lot of things sort of didn't happen for certain reasons. So I'm not criticizing or anything, but I mean.
Yeah.
I was excited for some of the changes because it sounded really good, but they never came through. So that's where I say that the Budgie desktop has sort of stagnated for quite a long time now. And that's probably why people don't go back and revisit it, because you're just really going to find the same thing. I don't know. Leo did mention that they're going to add Flatpak and snaps to the software center. Have they done that yet? Because I didn't see that.
I saw snaps updates.
Yeah, I don't know if they've added it to the store or anything like that, but
Right.
that was the idea, how to get around the third-party stuff that they were struggling so hard. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, earlier last year when I installed Solus, I went with the OBS Flatpak, and it was just an easy. I think I went to FlatHub and did their install, and they have this support right from the get-go for flats.
I might just, sorry, Eric, I might just continue to keep tabs on Solus, because I think maybe the update might have the Flatpak and snaps within the software center. Definitely because I can't get it updated, I can't see anything, but definitely it's not in the live environment of the 4.3. So yeah, that's probably why there are a lot of updates, but they might be having server issues, blackouts maybe, or something went wrong, but there's obviously a problem there. And like you said, they'll fix it eventually. So I might just have to give it another go and check it out. But I'm excited with what Josh is doing. I really am, because I'm hoping that, because if you have a look at Ubuntu Budgie, because Solus don't want to use Python and they keep it very clean and use C in it, and C++ or C or whatever they use. I'm not a developer or anything, but I do know that much, that they use the C and they wanted a completely clean desktop, which was Ike's plan. That's why it installs fast. That's why it works fast. They keep it clean and they don't want any Python stuff added into it. Whereas Ubuntu Budgie decided somebody knows how to do Python and added all these applets to it, which is quite exciting. And it's just a shame that Solus cannot reap the benefits of all that work within their desktop, because it's a real shame. But I'm hoping that somehow Josh can maybe change that with some of the work that he does in the EFL desktop environment. So that would be exciting changes. So that's where I see it heading. Be nice to see.
I hope that they pivot away from the EFL approach and go Qt. That would be awesome.
That was a plan a long time ago, though.
Yes, but that was before Ike left. When Ike left, that went away.
Are we still having concerns about licensing issues with Qt at this point?
There's not ever been a licensing problem. People say that all the time, but the licensing issue was solved in 1999.
No, it was okay. So they had brought up the fact that if you were using the open source version, you weren't going to get updates for a quite long period of time or something like that.
That's only the LTS point releases.
Okay, great.
So if you constantly roll with the open source releases and you don't want to stick to an LTS release, which is the enterprise version or whatever, you can still get an LTS release, but only the first release, not the point releases. So if you just keep going with the next like 6.1, 6.2, and et cetera, it will continuously get updates. It's only like 6.3.1 which you wouldn't get updates for that one. So that's the
So-
only difference.
The biggest issue I remember about that was that there were some implementations that existed in Qt5 that did not exist in Qt6. So rolling with Qt6 would have actually hampered Plasma
Yeah, that's
Desktop
how
and
they
some
do
of
it
the
every single time.
Right.
Every new major version of Qt, they do a process where the first version of Qt doesn't have all of the modules ported over to the next version, and then the next couple of versions they put them all in. So that's why Plasma hasn't switched to Qt 6 yet. When Qt 6 when Qt 6 has all of the modules completely ported, then Plasma will be using Qt 6, and it will it'll be Plasma 6 point whatever. So that's
Gotcha.
that's a thing that they always do.
I would be okay with a Qt-based Budgie. Ironically, Qt seems to have better accessibility than the GTK applications.
Qt has the thing about Qt and GTK is that in the Linux ecosystem, GTK is dominant. In every other ecosystem, Qt is dominant. So it's like when Qt is also drastically used in a variety of places. It's on all of the different all the main operating systems, Windows, Mac, and Linux. It's on Android, and it's also on a lot of infotainment systems like in cars and stuff. So Qt is widely used. And because of that, they have a lot of effort put into the accessibility and a variety of different toolkit supports and tons of stuff. And it's also really optimized. So like when people say, they're surprised that Plasma is so, lightweight. And that's because they just assume it's going to be heavy because of all the stuff it can do. But because it's based on Qt, it's actually lightweight because Qt is very, the way it handles its resources is very efficient. So if Budgie were to do a Qt-based DE, it would be amazing. Like I think it could be a game changer and make it where it would have a challenge. Plasma would have a challenger there.
Well, let me just say that I would really appreciate some competition to Plasma using Qt, because I would like to see what someone else could do with it in terms of, UI and presentation and stuff like that. Because Plasma, for better or for worse, I feel is very, I don't know, to me, it feels really stagnant, Maybe you don't feel that way, but I do. And every time I look at it, I'm like, it's been 6 months since I looked at it, and this is exactly the same. There's literally like, I don't know. I just don't feel any kind of like momentum happening. A lot of it is bug fixing, which is great. And a lot of it is adding features that you would expect to already be there, which is great. But a lot of it feels just like it's sort of a catch up. And I know this is way off. We're way off in the weeds now, but.
Well, looking at the other side of it, you look at the changes that GNOME was making. They changed the position of where your workspaces are. Everybody lost it. Everybody absolutely lost it. So, I mean, maybe it's okay if they're easy.
Yep. No, and I agree with that, and I don't mean it in the sense of changing things just for the sake.
No, I didn't take it that way, but it's just funny to see that if Plasma doesn't change a whole lot and GNOME changes a whole lot, there will always be people that don't like that particular aspect of each of those desktops.
Right.
So yeah, it's just funny to watch, I think.
But I think it would be interesting to see Budgie or any other distro using Qt, desktop environment using Qt and doing something interesting with it, I guess.
What's that latest one again?
There's one UK UI uses Qt, doesn't it?
No, it's a newer one. It started out on Arch first, and now it's working its way to Ubuntu.
Oh yeah, Qtfish.
Qtfish, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Qtfish
Okay.
was based
Yeah,
on-
there's a bunch of Qt desktops. There's Lumina, there's LXQT.
Well, so LXQt is a good distribution, but it's not intended to be, or not a distribution. I did the same thing that Eric did. It's a good desktop. The problem is that its focus is exclusively to be a modern LXDE. It's not trying to be a competitor to Plasma. It's trying to be a successor to LXDE. So it's going to be very limited on purpose. And Qtfish is essentially an iPad kind of wannabe thing. And it's cool that that these things are using Qt, and especially Qtfish is using Kwin technology stuff. So that's cool. And there's other efforts in the fact that Deepin uses Qt 5. Then also, I think Deepin actually uses Kwin. And the UK UI uses part of Kwin as well. There's a lot of desktop environments that have Qt backing, and it's changing more and more and more. But the Plasma is the only one that's really trying to push the boundaries of what you can do in a system. And I do think that it's fair to say that Plasma doesn't change that much on the first install. It also depends on like what distro you're using it on, because if you're using it on the vanilla versions of Plasma, yeah, it's going to be, it's not going to change much because they don't change the default look and feel and all that stuff. But they do change it. They do add a lot of features. Like I'm really excited for the next version of Plasma to introduce the overview effect. I can't wait for that one.
It's on the list for news. Michael.
Got it.
Model list.
Then you know what? That's a
It is.
that's a good. Why don't we? I think we've done a good job sort of summarizing our experience with Solus. It's a shame that Peter's not here because he's our resident Solus.
Since you mentioned that, Peter did post a message on Telegram, and he said within the Solus community there's a lot local knowledge of keeping away from a weekend to update your system. I don't know much about, but one of the main mirrors is a university, and that gets swapped in the weekend for all the distros and systems they host. And he also says FlatHub and Snaps are installed, but are terminal based, not yet added to the software center.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to know.
It's very cool. It has a lot of interesting approaches. The way that Enlightenment does certain window management features is fantastic and super interesting, especially with the independent virtual desktops per monitor is a super powerful feature. The issue with EFL is that it is a very limited size team and very limited amount of pre-made frameworks and toolkit stuff. So if Budgie were to switch to EFL and they continue this path, they're going to have to build a lot of custom stuff or work together with the EFL team to build out EFL farther into what Budgie needs it to be. Because EFL is made for more of like not really a desktop environment, but kind of a desktop. Like it's like a gray area, and it makes it a little bit different. So I would say the EFL could be totally fine, but right now it needs more build out.
I honestly have no idea. What is EFL?
Enlightenment Foundation Libraries.
Okay.
It's another toolkit.
It's a
Okay.
toolkit that's built for Enlightenment. And
Gotcha.
for years, it was actually built by, I think Samsung funded it for Tizen, I think. But I don't remember if it was Samsung, but it was a company like that. And
Gotcha.
EFL was really cool, but now they have less than 5 people, I think, working on it. So if Budgie wants to jump into that and start improving EFL, that would be cool. But I don't know if that's the practical option, because Qt already has a ton of value that they can have instantly. So it just feels like to me that the better route is Qt. Again, I am a little bit biased because of the whole Plasma fanboyness, but whatever.
I have Plasma FOMO because the versions I've tried seems to be the versions that don't work so well with screen reading technology. So I've never seen the full potential of Plasma yet.
Yeah, the screen reader stuff. I mean, unfortunately, accessibility is not that widely available in Linux as a whole because of a lot of the times the developers are just not thinking about it, and we have to kind of like get on them about like keep this in mind when you make stuff, like test it in the screen readers and that sort of stuff. So like when people run into applications that don't have any screen reader support, it's just because the developers didn't think about needing it.
Well, I mean, it's not a problem on the whole, but it'd be interesting to have Plasma give GNOME a run for its money in terms of accessibility, because either right now it's you run GNOME or you run a window manager and you layer your applications on top of that. So I think it would be interesting to have that competition.
Yeah, I think so. I think Qt has a ton of potential, and with another platform pushing it, it'd be very good. There's already a lot of people pushing Qt. Like
Right.
in the chat, Neil's talking about how Selfish and WebOS use Qt, and LunaOS use Qt, and so many things actually use Qt that like people think that GTK is the dominant force in toolkits, and it's not really even close. And also, Qt is probably the best option for app developers too, because you're getting the benefit of if you use a GTK based DE, then you get the nice GTK support, provided you like it libid Weta, and you get all that. But with Qt, you also get pretty easy, not instant, but very easy support for having your application work on Mac and Windows too. So that's why Qt is so powerful.
And I'd like to point out, Qt applications can look just like GNOME ones too. There are a number of ways to pull that off. And for example, the folks in Fedora, in the Fedora KDE, Fedora Qt group, we wrote a GNOME platform module for Qt. And so when in Fedora Workstation, when you load a Qt or KDE application on GNOME, it loads GNOME platform and will look like a GNOME application. So Qt is very, very powerful, and people underestimate it so much in the Linux world. Partly, I think, because there's some fetishization of GTK and C and a lot of the, some of those paradigms in there, but also partly because there's some holdovers from the ancient times of, the perception of Qt versus GTK. And it couldn't be further from the truth. There have been a number of like very prominent applications over the years that have moved from other toolkits to Qt because Qt is just easier to work with, more cross-platform, and actually looks more native on more platforms.
People
Well, I
always
wanna-
bring up the fact that Qt is proprietary, even though it's not. So that's one thing that I think it's always an incorrect thing about it.
Misconception.
It's annoying because of how complicated the licensing is. Because Qt is proprietary and also not. It's open source completely and also proprietary commercialized. If you want it to be, that's the thing. It's multi-licensed.
It's dual licensed. Yeah.
So if you want to pay the fee to use it in the proprietary sense and make software,
Which is pricey.
You totally can. It is very expensive, yes, but you could do it. Or if you want to make open source software, then you just use the open source version of Qt, which is basically the same thing, except for you can the proprietary license stuff also gives you access to the LTS point releases. But that's pretty much the only difference.
Well, before we get too far down the Qt train, because it will roll in just a little bit, so I don't want everyone to hop on it at the saloon, right? I want to close out our Solus discussion. Kind of go around and say who would say some reasons for why people should give Solus a spin. So like what maybe some top reasons. I have my list, but I want to hear from somebody else before I. So Rick, what would you say would be a reason that people should try Solus?
Well, I think predominantly it's because it's fairly stable distribution, and they got some good things like Mate. I think had like. When I checked it out on HTOP, it had 533 megabytes. So it's pretty low. It's within XFC's range, out of 16 gigs of memory I've got on here. And it also has a lot of just good with flat packs. Obviously, you can get most anything you want now as far as software goes. So there's no holdback there. I've used it as daily driver before. I've installed it several times, both to review it mostly and for a couple of daily drivers.
Okay.
And it usually just works and installs pretty easy usually.
So Jinda, I haven't heard from you really at all. So what would you say some reason? I'm not gonna let you get away with not saying something. So what would you say would be a reason that somebody should install Solus?
That would be difficult for me. I really couldn't get it to work.
Oh, okay. Well, in that
yeah, I'm
case-
sorry. Every time I installed it and updated it and rebooted it, it would just go black.
Oh,
It'd
well,
never
that's
come back again. I
unfortunate.
really had a hard time with trying to use it.
I have installed and used Solus before. It was a while back, but the install was pretty straightforward. It worked on the hardware that I was using at the time, which was an AMD F2A85 board with an AMD. It wasn't the 940, it was the one after that, but it worked out of the box. The boot sequence was fast as fast gets. That
Yes.
I changed. For me, my personal preference is to use OpenSUSE. So I looked at Solus and said, this is a neat idea and I like what they're doing here, but my day-to-day workflow, just OpenSUSE fits me better. I tip my hat to this distro for what
I
they're
agree.
trying to do, but it just doesn't suit my day-to-day. So, but I do think anybody who wants to understand different variants of Linux should give Solus a try to see if it would work for them.
Yeah, I think
And
I
do you,
agree. The speed is quite. I mean, it's very noticeable. I mean, the install and the boot up is just incredibly fast. What do you say, Mark?
Yeah.
Saying that it's shocking how fast it boots. Like when I first tried Solus many years ago, the first time, I turned away and it was already booted. Like what? Like that stuff is impressive. And I think that if anybody wants to try Solus, the thing that makes me think that it's valuable for people who want to experience something that's different, because basically everything in Solus is different than how everybody else does it. So if you want a unique distribution, Solus is a good option for that. It does require you to be comfortable with all the universal formats, and because of how the access to different applications is limited. But if you are totally uncomfortable using all the different formats, then you will have a totally fine experience, more than likely. And if you don't want to heavily modify your distribution, because Budgie is not, well, I guess if you don't use Budgie, but Budgie is not designed for extreme modifications. But the out-of-the-box experience with Budgie, I think, is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I agree. Top notch. Mark, you had something you were going to say?
I was just going to say, for myself, I've spent so much time in Ubuntu flavor desktops. This Solus is one to try to see how good Linux can be with other things. The installer was different. The Budgie desktop's different. Even the EO package manager was different, right? And all of it works. So they do put a lot of time and effort into it. I would say it is different from Ubuntu flavor type stuff, and that's why I would suggest using Solus.
It's a fair point. I mean, to see how other people do things. Yeah, I like that variety and different ideas. People might sometimes complain about, there's too many distributions out there, but that's actually the strength of it, is that there are so many different ideas and so many people trying different things, and generally new things that work really well are brought to attention and get folded in, brought upstream and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Neil,
it's got to be one of the quickest shutdowns too. I mean, it is.
Oh,
Yeah. Even in a VM, it's pretty fast.
Mhm.
So I'll give it props for that.
Yeah, for sure. Neil, you had something you want to say about?
Yeah. So I've actually briefly worked on Solus, not substantially so. I did a little bit of stuff back when Ike was at the helm of Solus. And it was interesting being involved in his process and talking to him about it as he was working through it, and doing some pair programming and in helping to develop it. It's a very different philosophy underpinning Solus than what the Debian family does. It's pretty much the polar opposite of the Debian family, and I think that comes from Ike previously having developed a Debian derivative and didn't like how that turned out, and so he kind of just went back to the drawing board to do something very different there. The idea that packages, when they install, run no scripts, that everything is simplified and configured at build time and shipped that way, from things like the first stage initramfs boot stuff, that's pre-baked at build time, to the configuration for how stuff is set up on there. There were significant modifications made to the entire stack to follow this philosophy. And it was very, very comprehensive work. And I really, really admired the effort that he put into doing it. And it resulted in a beautifully architected platform that allowed it to be really efficient in some really key ways. And that made it attractive despite all the pitfalls of the custom package manager, EO package, lack of app availability, small team across the board. But despite all of that, they put together a phenomenal experience. They put together a unique proposition, and they showed some really interesting ideas from both a developer side and a user side that I think other distributions can take and learn from. Like, I know certainly it's something that I've taken concepts from and put back into Fedora, and I've worked with other people in like OpenSUSE and whatever to kind of bring the nice things about those there without maybe necessarily some of the uglier warts that were come from the first generation of that stuff. But like, it's worth always looking at the other stuff going around, even if you find a particular one in your home. So like, I am very, very firmly in the Red Hat Fedora camp, and I do quite a lot in the OpenSUSE camp as well, as Nate and many others know. But I always have a machine somewhere running everything. And I do that so that I can understand how the landscape's evolving, what interesting things are going on, and see where what unconventional best ideas might actually be worth taking and bringing out to the broader audience. So I think if for nothing else, that's a great reason to try Solus.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody else have anything they wanted to contribute to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, what was the
ahead.
question? The question was whether how to
why
sell
you should give it a
Solus?
spin. Well, no, just why should you give it a spin? Like, if, you're on an elevator with somebody, and they said, some stranger says to you, "Hey, I've heard about the Solus OS. Why should I try it?" I realize that would never happen, but should it happen, what would you tell them?
Well, I have to think that it's a simple install. It's fast. It's always up to date, so you don't have to ever reinstall again. And it's from knowing Peter, it's quite solid as well. So it's fairly stable in that regard as well. And I think also Solus cops a bit of a raw deal when it comes to packages, because they do tout themselves as a desktop oriented desktop environment. So it's not, they don't really try to sell it as anything else but a simple desktop for people to use. So I think they've got enough there within the packages to accommodate the average desktop user. And I think that's where they come from pretty much. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have grown their packages over time. So there are obviously other people outside the desktop usage that do want to use it as well. But I think that's to be one of the reasons why I reckon you give it a go.
Yeah, Colin, you're right. They definitely have grown their packages and selections, and a lot of that is, again, based on their users providing feedback. And I think that's probably one of the reasons Peter might tell you that he likes it so much, is that there definitely there's that feeling of it's a collective effort. There's a group of people developing the software, and then there's a group of users who are vocal and providing feedback, and through that they have sort of grown forward and brought in different packages and things that were important as a whole to their base. And that's actually really an interesting exercise to see that happen, right? That organic growth of time and different audience, different people coming in and different voices, different maintainers, things like that. So I think any distribution that can get off the ground, first of all, and then can maintain itself for any amount of time, especially over a period of many years, that's a amount of effort that at first there might be a certain amount of enthusiasm for. But I think over time, that enthusiasm, if it doesn't turn into belief that this is time well spent, that you quickly find projects starting to fail and falter because that key group of people just doesn't have the momentum, doesn't have the incentive to keep doing it. And so Solus, in that respect, even though they've had some pretty significant changes in leadership and other things, has continued to persist, and I think that's a great sign.
Just a fun fact, Ike was, I remember he was running the same little Intel Skull Canyon NUC that I've got for my main system. And I remember he was bragging that it booted in 0.3 seconds.
Nice.
I think it's always great when you can have the same hardware that the devs using.
Yeah.
Although a lot of times my hardware is better than the devs, and I don't have good hardware because I hear some of the devs talk. So it's good that when devs do have good hardware.
Yeah, we don't get good hardware. We usually don't. You can attribute a lot of the reasons why users get why users suffer with things like high DPI displays or super powerful graphics configurations or fast SSDs is because most of us can't afford them. So we don't have them.
There's got to be a good way to keep developers with good hardware. Let's think about that, Michael.
Yep. And honestly,
many ways to do it, but it requires this weird thing called funding, and it's it's difficult sometimes.
No, offline. We'll talk. I got an idea.
Okay, cool.
It's true, but honestly, if you think about it, that system that's $2,000 for a killer laptop, maybe the amount of return on that is
investment.
Yeah, that's a huge return on the investment. And that's not a lot of money. A couple $1,000s is not really a lot of money to crowdsource or something like that to get someone in a position where they have a better system to use. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah, definitely something worth talking about.
I can say from personal experience that this lovely, admittedly old, formerly demo display unit Slimbook laptop sent to me by Slimbook was actually really, really helpful in kickstarting my ability to get KDE Plasma Wayland as a default for Fedora, because prior to having that computer, I just didn't have one that was performant enough that I could actually do those kinds of experiments and that kind of development. And I mean, it's not a fantastic laptop, but it's at least new enough that like the modern Mesa stuff works, and I don't have to use a proprietary NVIDIA driver. And, for a long time, NVIDIA driver was basically a no-go for Wayland. That's obviously not true anymore, but those kinds of roadblocks kind of fell away because like the only two personal laptops I have, I couldn't do it with. And this laptop really helped out. And like, I can say that if a developer who is like doing a lot in the Linux desktop space, a lot of them, they're not doing it professionally, they're doing it personally. And that puts a whole new level of constraints on things. So like, when they get hardware to be able to do stuff, things move fast. As soon as people are enabled to like really work with that stuff. So
yeah,
that's certainly something I personally experienced. And if I ever got better hardware for my desktop, which is actually now 7 years old and has a buggy CPU and no SSD. I would probably be able to do more streaming, more development, more virtual machine stuff. Like those are the kinds of things that a lot of developers wind up needing, these high powerful rigs to be able to do things effectively, but they can't afford them, and so they don't have them. And so they got to work with what they have. And it's very common in free software desktop Linux development, as opposed to server Linux development, where it's extremely common for them to be professionally employed, have overkill computers that happen to just run Windows, and then they SSH into the Linux things or run VMs or whatever, and that kind of thing. So like that's kind of why you see such a rough imbalance, is because the vast majority of professional people using Linux for servers or doing Linux server development just do not use Linux on their machines because either their corporation, their employer doesn't let them, or their hardware doesn't work, or a combination of those two.
All right. Excellent stuff. So why don't we SSH into what distros we are going to look at next? So on the docket is Pop! OS, Void Linux, the Arch installer, and Clear Linux. So we got to come up with a new distro for next week.
It's been a while since we've tried out Clear Linux. I think that might be an interesting thing to try.
I was gonna say that.
I'm gonna second that one because I'm recently coming off a Void trial, so I'll try out Clear Linux.
Isn't Clear the one that Intel made?
It might be, yeah.
I think
That's the one that has all the mitigations from Meltdown Inspector removed.
Oh, it should be fun.
That doesn't seem like a very good distribution to be tested.
Well, you know, if
I
you
will go ahead and say it's terrible.
if you
Because
take off,
removing mitigations for massive vulnerabilities, terrible.
so if you take off,
That's how you
all
get
the-
speed.
is there
fast.
substantiation to that claim there, sir? Because I've never heard that mentioned.
It's been.
It-
they
it's
did that
true.
Years ago. Yeah.
It's true.
It's true.
I'll just use
It's
them-
like one of the Clear Linux principally exists as Intel's experimentation hub for leveraging the latest Intel microarchitectures with their custom code, with their compilers and all that stuff. And to that end, a lot of things that you expect a distribution to do, they don't, because it doesn't really suit them.
Clear Linux is explicitly designed to get the maximum performance out of your hardware, specifically Intel hardware, at every possible cost. And because of that, Clear Linux does actually have some, because of that, things like Spectre and Meltdown, you are still vulnerable to. They won't go to extents that are unreasonable, but at the same time, it is not for everyday use. It is not for use on a server. It is not for use on a desktop. It is for use if you want to legitimately benchmark your hardware at its maximum potential. That is what it's meant for, basically. And
That's what it's meant for now. I mean, it used,
right.
I think in the beginning, the Intel folks thought it could be something more broadly interesting, and they used to do a lot more on that front. Like, there were grandiose plans, but those have been shelved, and the staff around Clear Linux has dropped. Although I don't know too much about what's going on in there, but like it's way tighter than it used to be.
Which I will give credit where credit is due. It does well at what it's meant to do, to the point where even AMD once said, if you want the best performance out of your hardware, use Clear Linux.
Well,
And
when
when-
you turn off all the mitigations, that tends to help quite a lot.
Right.
It
My
kind of
point
does.
about-
And besides, AMD isn't quite as vulnerable to those vulnerabilities as Intel was. And modern Intel and AMD CPUs like 12th gen Intel and AMD 5th gen and 3rd gen aren't as vulnerable either. But
Still are. They didn't do the hardware mitigation. It's still a
Yeah.
software mitigation.
I'm still on Haswell.
How about we all just use a MySQL password? We
My
should be
point
fine.
is like I just like to veto Clear Linux because no one should use it. So
All right,
I
so
think
let's come up with something.
Well,
Fine.
I haven't used
What
Pop
about
in a long
Alpine
time.
Linux?
Alpine.
Yes.
What's their claim to fame?
They're the operating system that the Docker made default for containers.
Oh,
they
okay.
are actual Linux, not GNU Linux. They have no GNU core utils or anything like that.
They have
Oh.
them. They're packaged. They're just not the
They're
default.
packaged. Yeah, they're not default. So unless you install them manually, you can't say you're running GNU / or plus Linux. It's just Linux,
I mean,
for better or for worse.
that's kind of interesting and different.
I don't remember if they switched from GCC to Clang, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
Yeah.
I don't
A lot
know.
of-
They might still be using GCC.
A lot of my friends have been pushing me to try Alpine.
It's an interesting platform. It uses a different C standard library, which introduces all kinds of
that's
fun
the second
stuff.
time she's rung me, I think, accidentally. Clown.
Yeah, it uses how do you say
Muscle.
it?
Muscle.
Okay, so the screen reader is saying it right. It's apparently muscle.
Muzzle libc, and it uses BusyBox. Like it's
Interesting.
It's a different one.
Yeah, I've done.
To
different
appreciate
is-
security and simplicity and resource efficiency.
Different is definitely the word I would use for it.
Well,
I've done
I'm
a
not
couple of
opposed
videos on Alpine Linux, and yeah, it made me look a bit like a goose. Some of the questions it asked when I was installing it was a bit confusing, but that's because I don't normally have to answer questions about what keyboard you're using or stuff like that. But it was interesting, to say the least.
I mean, you used
weird,
to.
'cause I've never seen an installer that doesn't ask you what keyboard you're using.
Yeah.
Well, most of them now auto select instead of like prompting you, forcing to prompt you.
Yeah, it was the options that threw me a little bit. That's all.
I would honestly rather it auto select, which is why or did not auto select and caused me to choose one.
I mean, they auto select, but they should at least let you test and make sure the keyboard is right.
It's a command line install. That's the problem.
Oh, it's old school.
Yeah, it's a very, very bare bones experience.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, because it's a small release.
No, because of what they're targeted at right now. They just mostly started for containers and server stuff first, and they've been expanding out into desktops later.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think the command line install would suit me because I'm starting to prefer either an installer that actually gets out of my way and lets me edit things directly when I need to, or bootstrapping it myself. I tend to.
So what were the other options?
So
Sorry.
Pop OS is on the list.
Definitely forgot.
It's been a while since we've done Pop. Antics, and the other option that was suggested is Draugr OS. We know one of the developers. You might have heard of him. His name's Thomas. And but he's at beta. What is it? Beta 3 right now. Beta 2. So
Beta 2 is coming out next week. So if you want to try it, I would like it then.
And I see there's a recommendation for Arch Labs. So I just want something that we've got plenty of weeks ahead of us, so we don't have to deliberate too hard. But it looks like we had some anything really would be great. What do you
could be?
I think so.
Linux
I'm
from
not
scratch it is.
Linux from scratch. It won't be this time.
I would say.
I don't know if you want to go down that road.
I would advocate a more civilized approach and just do Gentoo, so that way you don't.
No, please don't do that. I am not. No,
You're going to give Bill PTSD.
I'm going to have some severe PTSD.
I don't think you're going to emerge from that argument victorious.
Promise, I'm going to tell you let me tell you a very quick story. I work as an MSP. And I had to deal with school districts where Gentoo was installed on their production equipment.
I love this story.
Excuse me, what?
This
What?
story makes me sad because I have a part in this.
When you say production equipment, are we talking desktops, laptops, servers, mainframes? What are we talking about here?
Yes.
Servers, desktops, laptops.
Yes.
And the reason why it did not succeed was because the person who installed it was a one-man company in the local area who had told the schools they would save tons of money over their Microsoft licensing by going to Linux, which on paper looks good, except he charged them for compile time on top of charging them for the ability to just check for updates on top of it. The Gentoo file server at one of these schools hadn't been updated in so long that it would hard lock every night, and we would have to go into VMware and push the button to turn it off and push the button to turn it on and pray that it came back, because the backup device that it was using was a co-RAID that got dissolved into the ether and had a bad backplane.
What?
And because that was the rollout. And despite me pleading with this individual, please use Proxmox, please use Red Hat, something with commercial support, he would say, I have no tolerance for System D. I insist on using
That's fine. It's fine.
Linux RC. Yeah, Linux RC and VixiCrun, and I manage it, and I'm the one that needs to make the money off of it. Why would I give money to Red Hat? And I said, because if something happens, it's such a bad look for you. Lo and behold, so that all happened when I was working at a school district as the IT director. And I was moonlighting for this guy on the side because he tried to come into my school district and sell me on the fact that he could outmanage my school. And I said, I'm just looking for someone who can tell me about Linux. I can manage myself. And so he finally brought me on as a consultant internally because I was more valuable to him as an employee than I was as a client. When I came back to the company that I work for now, he called me and said, I need to meet you. My company is dissolving. I want you to take over these schools, but you have to keep them on Gen 2. I said, okay. And as soon as he left the state, we ended up putting them into Windows because the superintendent said, I never, ever want to hear the name Linux again.
On the desktops, I can understand Linux in a school. On the servers, they should be using Linux, but not Gen 2. Like,
I'm
no.
slowly working.
Like,
sorry?
if you don't want
It
to
is
use systemd,
so
there
are way more particulars about this story that make it way worse.
Oh,
that was
yeah.
the quick
Those are
version.
just the big ones.
That was this is the fast version. So fast forward now, where am I? 7 years into this. This all happened about 10 years ago. Now, 7 years later, after coming back to the company that I work for, I manage multiple school districts as an MSP, and I am slowly integrating Linux back into the fold. And my whole mantra is we're going to roll out Linux responsibly and where it makes sense. Now, I am not going to be able to beat what Google does with the Chromebook because there are certain security and reporting functions that I can't do. However, I can implement solutions like Snipe It. That's easy. Orange HRM, that's easy. There are other little odds and ends along the way. There's one school district has a Linux VM that runs basically a MySQL database, and its purpose is to glean data out of the student information system, manipulate the data, and then spit that data back out to other information systems that don't have like an API or a link to the primary student information system. We're using cups at one school district, and all the school districts that we support are running pfSense for their firewalls. So we found ways to implement responsible open source or Linux-based solutions. And whenever they log into their NAS, I tell them, you do realize that NAS runs Linux, right? Oh, so see, not all Linux is bad. It can be wielded responsibly as a tool and not as a weapon.
It's like a fire. It's
Yes.
great when it's in the fireplace.
I've given you, yes, and I have given you guys the very abridged version of that.
But-
there are
but
people
not
in
on a
this
rug.
room. Yeah, there are people in this room who know the long story of what happened here, and I will spare them the PTSD that I've gone through in reliving those details.
Yeah, I think the
but-
short form was the appropriate choice, just to
Yeah.
get across the horror of that. And I think the unfortunate takeaway from that is that they have one bad experience with something that they perceive like they look at Windows and that's a single platform, right? There is no alternate Windows. It is Microsoft Windows. When then they put Linux in that same kind of box. So because they had this one negative connotation, this one negative experience, now all Linux is bad. And, all open source is bad, all open, all of that is bad because of that one experience. And that's really the shame of it is that, sure, that person was ridiculous. Using Gentoo was a terrible idea. And, they could have had a wonderful experience had they gone with something that was much more supportable and, purpose built for, using in that environment. So,
We
anyway.
still need to choose, though, don't we?
Okay, Pop OS it is. We'll do Pop OS. I want to do Pop OS for quite some time now, and
okay.
And so I want to just fire through. Let's do
I'm
Pop
good with
OS, and I just haven't tried it,
I've
and I
deleted
want
my
to.
Pop OS.
Excellent. You can try to install it again. All right.
Go by a memory.
Well, wait, are we doing Pop OS or Pop !_OS?
Well, you can choose between the two. It's whichever's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, it's like Pop OS.
So just to clarify, we're doing the latest version, right?
Yeah. Whatever's the latest version. Yep.
The 2110.
2110.
I think so. Yep. So I haven't seen it in a while. I want to see it, and so I'm gonna push that one. All right. And I want to do some quick housekeeping here. So the Linux Saloon logo contest goes through the end of the month. If you have any suggestions, it's logo@linuxsaloon.com. We're almost at the end of the month. 2 more days. We'll be making a decision likely this week. So if you can send those in, that would be awesome. And I'd like to now move on to some news. We don't have a whole lot of time left. We're just about out. So I want to get this because Michael's here, especially. So I want to muddle through the Linux news. And as always, a big thank you to Michael of This Week in Linux for mixing up a great flight of topics. They're shaken, I think, not stirred. I'm assuming.
Shaken, not stirred. That's right.
Excellent. So KDE Plasma 5.24 LTS beta was released. And they made the beta release available for those who would like to help test the next version of KDE Plasma. As this is a beta release, I'm just going to cover just a few different little things here. So one of the some of the stuff that was done to it, there's a variety of system tray and widget improvements. The Discover improvements, which are probably sorely needed. Although I can't help but wonder, Neil, do you think Zipper will ever be able to play nice with Discover?
No.
Okay. Improvements to the KDE system settings.
I'm excited.
And
It plays nice with GNOME.
No, the problem is that nobody none of the people that originally developed the Zipper backend for PackageKit care about the Zipper backend for PackageKit today. So it's just a barely maintained mess right now.
Yeah, it worked great for a while. It's fine on Leap, but it's not fine on Tumbleweed.
Pretty much.
Multi-monitor improvements, which I wonder what they're going to improve. I think it's probably the best experience I have for multi-monitor. Window handling improvements. And there's this, they're touting this new overview on Plasma. There is one that exists today that you can activate through the compositor. But if you looked at the beta, I don't know if anyone's actually seen it, but it's actually really cool, and it looks kind of like what GNOME does.
Yes.
And I know it's a really, I think it's a neat effect. Hats off to GNOME. Give credit where credit is due. So, Michael, I'm assuming you're probably pretty excited about Plasma 24.
A little bit. I mean, just slightly. I mean, I wouldn't be over exaggerating or anything. That's kind of, but it's awesome. I can't wait. And the overview is going to be one of the things that I'm most excited about. There's a lot of stuff in the new Plasma. I know that this is not that important, and it doesn't matter at all, but the customization of the accent colors of the Breeze theme, for some reason, I'm excited about that. But the most exciting thing is the overview, because it's essentially kind of like a GNOME overview where it has the combination of the virtual desktops and the windows, the main window, present window style, and a search for like launching applications all merged into one. And I can't wait to see that and how they implement that, because it's one of those niceties that I think that Mac kind of nailed, and I want that kind of approach to be applied to Plasma, because Plasma is the most powerful desktop environment for me, in my opinion, but it does need a little bit of polish still. So I think that they're making a lot of progress there in these latest releases. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy that the improvements they made to the Plasma hasn't been, at least in my testing, hasn't increased like the memory footprint that it utilizes. That I'm very happy about. All right. Well, we are kind of sort of at the end here. Did anyone else have anything about Plasma they wanted to say? Neil, you always have something to say about Plasma, or cute, or something. Or
It's
not.
always cute to use cute.
All right. So for our last call, I want to ask, anyone has anything to plug for, like if they're doing any projects or anything?
Yeah.
I want to just kind of hit that up. So first, Steve, tomorrow, are you doing a stream?
Yes, I am. Hopefully, after last week, we're going to see if Comcast holds up this weekend.
Excellent.
There's no
Scamcast
snow,
it
but
is.
Yeah, there'll be a stream tomorrow. I'm just going to talk about, I think, 30 quotes on Linux and go from there.
Excellent. Now, Colin, you just released a video of your very own ISO on your own operating system.
Yeah, I was setting it up. I've written some bash scripts which I've never done on my main, never used on my main system. So thought I'd just take everyone along for the ride. And I've sort of updated those bash scripts a little bit more since then. So that's been a lot of fun.
That's cool. Yeah, I watched that today. A lot of it was
yeah.
a bit over my head, but I thought it was very interesting, and how you broke that all down. So that was very cool. So Colin,
Thanks.
yeah. If anyone if interested in seeing how Colin put together his own, it's an Arch-based operating system.
Yeah,
right? Was it
Arch-based.
Arch-based?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's
Arch-based,
very interesting.
yeah.
So are you going to hop off of that distro soon, or?
Oh, I'm going to stay on it for a while. Well, I've spun up 3 different ones. I've got XFCE, GNOME, and Cinnamon. I'm running Cinnamon now. I reinstalled it because it installs just as quick as Solus because everything's in the ISO anyway. So it just goes through really quick. So it's easy to get up and running. And the bash scripts have been made so I can go through everything in a logical order for setup. So I don't forget anything. And that's the reason why I've done the bash scripts. So it actually, instead of, which is what I used to do, is manually delete home folders and manually create links and all that. And this bash script does all that in an instant. So
that's cool.
I think what really got me going on that originally was, I think Ryan did some bash scripts a while ago, and I downloaded his, but then I came across Esnick's, and then his was a little bit more simplified and I could follow it. So it's, the menu and all that. So it's really cool. It's a bit over my head as well, but I mean, once you get into it, it's quite cool to make. Being Arch, you need something besides a software center, I suppose. So, yeah,
that's very cool. So yeah, I hope people check that out. Thomas, cool. You have a beta coming out, you said this week, for Drago OS?
Yeah, on Saturday the 5th, I have beta 2 out of 3 coming out. Mostly just bug fixes in the installer. BIOS installation is working correctly again, thankfully. Yeah, it's just mostly bug fixes and stuff like that. Well,
excellent. Well, look forward to that, and you give us an update next week on that too. So, Rick, you do a stream on Wednesdays, right? Kind of a low-key stream of you installing some.
Yeah, when it works, I have a stream like Steve does. Yeah, I think Steve's stream kind of bugged mine or something. Anyway, I have a stream at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, and I usually review the coming distro, so I guess we Pop! OS this week.
Excellent. So it's a nice low-key stream that he does. He kind of goes through the process, and then for me, it's fun to like tell him to do things. So if you want to tell somebody what to do on the internet, stop by, tell Rick what to do. Mark, do you have any Linux user group things coming up in your area?
Again, every week we have a meetup to help new users with questions and answers, and that's through the Atlanta Linux Enthusiasts. You can find us on Meetup, and also on ale.org, ALE.org.
Cool.
That's tomorrow for 3 hours. And again, anyone's welcome to ask questions. We have a group of folks that try to help.
That's excellent.
I'm sorry, did you say that was streaming or?
No, it's just a Jitsi meeting.
Oh, Jitsi. Okay.
And again,
Cool.
we're a Linux user group in Atlanta. But since, with COVID, we're all online, everyone's welcome.
Could you put a link to that, to whatever you think would be the best way for someone to join that thing tomorrow in the Zoom chat, and then we can put that out in the
ale.org is the simplest. That's
ale.org. Okay, great.
Excellent.
And then there are other good meetups on meetup.com. There's a Northern Virginia Linux group. There's plenty of Linux groups to join all throughout the week.
Okay, I see. It's right there on the main page of ale.org is the ALE Sunday meeting. Great.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mark.
That's perfect.
Michael, you're part of a show tomorrow. Is that correct? Something? Destination something?
So I think I might be doing a show. Yeah. It's just this network happens to have this show called Destination Linux. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. And it's pretty
Linux. Huh.
Yeah.
That's a new one.
It's a live stream show. It happens every every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and it is always fantastic. Not biased at all.
Awesome. So if you're not doing anything else, that's a great thing to do to watch. I always have it on while I'm burning myself in the kitchen.
And even if you are doing something else, it's totally good to have it on there too. So feel
right.
free to do that. Multitasking is important. It's a big factor of life. So try it out.
It is. And I don't know if anybody else had anything they want to contribute as far as like something that they're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd
Fire
like
away,
to put in a plug for the Sudo show. For those of you that would like to learn more about Linux and education, there is a segment that was released last week called The Sudo Show Goes Back to School. And there will be another episode of that coming out next week and one in a few weeks after that. So if you would like to find out more about how Linux could be used in education, I would ask that you check out the Sudo Show on the on DLN.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you for that.
Also, my friends recently released their game, and they're looking for patron support.
Okay.
You can 2mb.solutions. It's basically a collection of games based around Halloween / haunted house. It's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed them.
Cool. Well, make sure you share that. Like, if you're in our Telegram group, make sure you share it with everyone else there too, so people can check that out. I'm all about the community stuff. And also, I want to plug one little thing. I'm putting a link. There is he's a Linux developer for I think Stormfish OS, I believe it's called. He lost his father, and he's like kind of in a shelter, but then somebody stole his computer, and it's kind of a bad thing for him right now. But he could use some help at this time. Leviticus reached out to me and asked if I could plug that. So I'll put that in the Telegram group as well if someone feels like they'd like to do that. But some people are working with him right now, and it'd just be nice to help him out. Hopefully he can continue to do some developing. But he's got some disabilities, so he's not able to get a regular 9 to 5. And I'd also like to plug DLN Extend. It's a podcast that I'm on. Going to be Linux Out Loud. I don't know how quickly, but very soon. Check that out. It's my co-hosts Matt and Wendy, or I should say Wendy and Matt. I'll put them in that order because that's the order I prefer. We talk about all the happenings in Linux and around the community. It's a lot of fun. And also you can find more about me at cubiclenight.com. So I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and in the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology, because Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. So thank you for stopping by, and be sure to tip your developers, and please always remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
See ya.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.